So AI in the future of digital government. AI, as you all know, in all of its various forms and definitions is everywhere at the moment, from political speeches to digital products. It's already reshaping the world of work, including in government, and it brings opportunities, challenges, and risks in serving the public. How is it playing out in practice? What skills do we need to shape the future and get ahead of the game? What impact will it have on all of our work and more widely on government? Big questions. We've got two brilliant panellists to start answering those and plenty more. We've got Professor Kirstine Dale, who's Chief AI Officer at the Met Office, and Dr. Jennifer Barth, who's Director of Research at FSP. Again, I'll go to each of them for some opening thoughts on those huge questions. We'll have a bit of a conversation between the panel, and we'll make sure there's time for questions from all of you as well. Again, please do use Slido, and we'll make sure that we send the mics round as well. So AI in the future of digital government. Who would like to kick us off?
I've got to look at, my mum will know if I don't do this. It's St Patrick's Day, so if anybody's Irish or got Irish roots out there, happy St Patrick's. Okay, digital future, the role of AI in the digital future. I think that AI to a certain extent has come up the inside lane, and it is now fundamentally changing the way we live our lives in all respects, the way we live our daily lives. So it touches us every day. Like, I used Google Maps to find my way here this morning. I use Photo ID on my phone to open it. It's part of our daily lives. So I encourage everybody to embrace it and to get to grips with it, because not only is it affecting your daily lives, but it's going to affect your working lives as well. So at the Met Office, for example, it is fundamentally changing how the whole organisation works, and that goes through from back office functions like how the HR team do their business, or the comms team, or finance team, but also some of the fundamental science areas. So how can we use AI to develop and refine how we forecast the weather and how we model the climate? So it's affecting everything.
Amazing. I'm glad you went green for St Patrick's Day.
Yes, I had to. Lots of excitement in my house about this being St Patrick's.
Hi, really great to be here. I'm from FSP. So my job is to help people bring AI into their organizations, and I do that from a research-led, evidence-based way of thinking about it. So structured foresight, decision-making through evidence. And I really believe and see in the public sector that the best way forward is thinking of AI as a strategic capability rather than quick fixes, small bits. How do we bring the story together? How do we wrap our arms around the process of bringing AI in, of relating to it, of finding ways to use it effectively, of closing the gap between us and the fear of how it's going to change our lives? How do we take that on? And that we can see all of that through the pathways others have taken, through the really positive stories of ways in which we're using it, learning from that, building workforce resilience. So that's beyond how do you use this, which is very important, to how do you make this make sense for you. So I was recently at a lunch where somebody said, how many people are using AI personally? How many people are using AI at work? How many people think they're using AI well and effectively? And workforce resilience helps you build that ability to make it yours, to close that gap between this big thing called AI that's going to imminently change our lives to how we are the creators of that change.
Great, thank you. We've had a great question come in on Slido already, so I'm going to start with that, which is, you both talked a bit about some of the opportunities that come from using AI and the fact that we're all using it already. How can we focus more effort and attention on where AI adds genuine value rather than trying to use it for everything at work?
Well, I think actually a portfolio approach is needed. We need to, in order for this to be a well-managed change, we need to embed it in small ways. In fact, Jen, you're going to be better at talking to this one, but I'm going to keep going. You can just
I'll follow up.
You fix what I say. I think that we need to embed it in small ways into our daily lives. So, for example, the Met Office making Microsoft 365 Copilot available to everyone has kind of demystified and made it much more accessible, and everyone can have a tinker, you know, so we can all start having a go. And we've set some really good policies, so we've got the guardrail set up. We're trying to create an environment where we can move people from concerned to curious to confident. And that means setting guardrails, providing training, publicising examples, but also publicising when we've got it wrong, so failure as well. It's really important to talk about that. And it's important to keep all of that moving, as well as having some of the really exciting spearheading projects. So, for example, we're developing a deep graph neural net for weather prediction. It's an amazing project, but 2,500 people in the Met Office. We're not expecting all 2,500 people to do the deep learning and coding that's needed to develop the weather model. However, we are expecting everybody to be thinking about how can AI improve their daily lives. So we've got the Copilot available to them. So it's about a portfolio approach of having these spearheading projects, which are like the big shiny projects which everyone can get excited about, but also having the smaller examples which make it an everyday tool for everybody.
Good. So some of the research we did with Microsoft on agentic AI, in the public sector, around 50% felt that they were unprepared to use AI effectively. And around the same amount of leaders in the public sector said we would love to use it more if we had better training and safeguards. And I think what I see over and over is a use case specific approach to AI. So it starts small. Start small is, what do we see in our work process or in our ideas? What new thing do we want to do that AI could work for us, that could help us do? And you're very specific, and you bring a team together, and there's creativity involved. And it might be a tool you already have. It might be Copilot, and you just have a new way of using it, or you think about some other way to use it. But rather than it being, here is your tool, try to use it, rewrite your emails, do these sort of jobs that are, make your lives a lot easier, but are sort of small. Instead, how could this change what you do? How could you do it better? How could you do it in better quality? So I often think we think, how do you become more productive? How do you do things faster, better, cheaper? How can I, and all of those things make us really concerned about our jobs, right? So instead, how could I use this to change the quality of how I do my work? And how can I use that quality to share with others? We come back to the collaboration point. How do I collaborate with AI, and how do I collaborate with others to make this better quality? If it's better quality when I do it, how does that affect the people down the chain? And every time you see those things, and I'm a huge believer in quick demos, and in another conversation, I think you said something about agility, and I'm a huge fan of agility. You have to be able to try it, see it. The amount of times I've seen people say, oh, I don't know how that's going to work, and then we show them something, you can do this. And everyone goes, oh, I could also do this, and then we could do it this way, and then we could add that. It allows you to be creative. And I think it's always starting in those small use cases. It's a difficulty because everybody, public sector and other organizations, all have lots of experimenting going on and have difficulty scaling. But the only way you're going to scale is if you believe in it and you start to use it, and then you show others how you use it, and you feel like you're getting your genuine quality up because you're using it well, not just doing something faster.
You preempted my next question in some respects, Jen, which is what's different about doing AI in the public sector and in government rather than other sectors, particularly the private sector?
Oh, that's a tricky question. What's different? Well, I think there is, we need to think about the guardrails and the policies, but I think in government, and this is one of the really exciting things about working in government, is there is always the potential to scale and to scale reasonably fast, so you need to be mindful of where something might go. I think that's an amazing opportunity for us, but it does require some careful thought up front. Plus, also, one of the seems like a theme for today, actually, being part of government provides this amazing opportunity to collaborate across the public sector. And I think AI is one of those tools. It's a bit like, it doesn't really mean anything until you apply it to a specific problem. It's a bit like computers. Computers don't, look fine, but using computing for something, so AI is the same. Like, AI is great, and if you're really into stats, you could talk about it for a long time. But really, it's using AI for weather forecasting, or using AI for modeling food security, or using AI for protein folding, or it's using AI for something. And sometimes that needs a type of collaboration that requires you to think not only about collaboration across the rest of the public sector, but also perhaps looking at the private sector as well.
I'll take that as well. I think there's two things. One is return on investment. So in the private sector, return on investment is about stakeholders, productivity, efficiencies, how you're making sense. It is a big problem to pay a lot of money to develop AI. What happens to people? How do you offset that amount? And really, with return on investment in the private sector, you don't see that return until middle or long term. So if you're thinking that way, you often can't make the justification immediately for it. You need to set yourself up for a mid or a longer term return. In the public sector, return on investment is experience. It's what experience, how does this help the public experience? And I think that there's obviously issues around resources and funding and those kinds of things, but ultimately, at the end of the day, are we making citizens' lives better? Are we managing and handling our public services in a way that continue to give the experience that we want, or do it better? But we've always wanted, do it better. And I think that also connects to the fact that we have to think about augmentation and collaboration in a different way in the public sector. It's important for everyone to think about where the human comes in, particularly with agentic. We feel we're losing more and more control to autonomous decision-making machines. We need a relationship with those machines to always remember where the human is. It's entirely possible that AI will get better at being empathetic. It's possible. We don't have to let it, and we don't have to let that dominate us. We can make sure we keep the human piece, and in the public sector, that is so important, that human engagement.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got some great questions coming in on Slido, so I'm going to turn to those because we've got a couple which are really standing out to the rest of the audience. One, and I know this is something the Met Office is thinking quite deeply about, Anonymous says, we need to be very aware of the negative environmental impact of using AI or overusing AI too, don't we? Scattergun rather than mindful use seems like it could be wasteful. So it'd be good to get both of your thoughts on that. And then the second question I want to put to you, another Anonymous, might be the same one, might be a different one, who knows. Some say AI will only make you good at your job, but not relying on AI for everything can allow you to be great. How do we deal with AI laziness?
Yes, this is a question I increasingly get, not about the laziness bit, about green credentials of AI. So AI is super exciting. I'm Chief AI Officer. I'm not going to tell you it's not exciting. This is has enormous potential to applied in the right way to help us address some of the large societal challenges that we face today, such as climate change. It's a tool that I think has come along just when we needed it most, and has significant potential to make the world a better place. However, it is not without its costs. Running an AI tool generates CO2, which exacerbates climate change, uses water. There are costs, and that means we need to be quite mindful about how and when we use it. In the world of weather forecasting, this is becoming a very big concern. Training the weather models, training the weather models is very computationally intensive. And so that's a big decision if you're going to train a weather model. Running it for a weather forecast, so the inference stage is computationally light, so that's less of a concern. But nonetheless, you can't do inference without the training, so it's all bound together. This situation where AI has the potential to help solve some of these big environmental challenges, but is also exacerbating some of the issues, is what is commonly referred to the green AI paradox. I would love to be able to tell you that we have the solution, but we don't. I think that the first step in this journey is to get a really good grip on the measurement boundaries, so how much CO2 we can attribute to running a different model, and then that will really inform the decision about how you deploy the most appropriate technology to answer the question that you're facing. So it's a work in progress, I'd say.
Should I leave that environmental one with you then? And then I think it's a huge problem, and I find really interesting that when I first started working with AI and doing the research, the question of sustainability and responsible AI all centered around the environment. And then it went quiet. So really, really quiet, that we're not going to talk about it. We don't really know. We're not really sure. Little bits here and there, but we're just going to go ahead and implement it. And actually, if you implement it, AI in a conscious way, and you make visible the energy sources, the relationships that Christine was talking about, then you actually can think of it as part of your ESG, commitments, and previously net zero commitments and all of that. You actually can build that as a way forward. It's extremely difficult, and it's fallen off the face of the earth in a lot of ways. And I think, to be honest, it's a shout out to the big tech firms to be much more transparent about their energy and what they call green energy. So it's something I actually take really seriously and find really difficult and need to continue to work on. The laziness question I'd be happy to take as well, or start off. So I have this theory as a parent and as somebody who's old and has gone through a lot of degrees and taken her time and thought about things, that it's kind of okay for me to like cut corners with AI because I know how to think, right? So now I just need some help because I have very little time, as I'm sure everyone in this room feels. So like, how does it just make my day better? Because I can ask it a question. It can look at 40 research reports for me in 2 seconds and just tell me what's happening. And then I can look into them, and it's cut my time down significantly, among other, major ways. But I worry about this laziness for my children who haven't learned to think this way, who haven't been critical thinkers yet, who don't know how to solve a problem in their head, a real world problem in their head, and then talk to others about it and then sort of work it out because they can take these shortcuts. Now, I do believe, because they're so amazing, they find ways, right? So they know so much more about some things, the way things work, than I do. So I know they'll find ways, but how much are we losing that critical thinking ability? So in my opinion, the laziness argument is a job for every single person to not let that happen. And it's only up to us. So the more lazy we are, the more AI is making our decisions for us, because that's where we're headed, right? The more we're lazy, the less we keep our brains going, and we're the only ones who can. And there's a lot of research about the generation right now using all these tech tools being the least kind of diverse in their thinking, and the least cognitively sort of strong. These are big worries for me, and I think it's easy to be a bit lazy. It's this effectiveness argument. When do you use it? How do you use it? Make your choices. You need to be proactive. You need to not let this happen to you, you make these choices. And it needs to become much more common that you can say to somebody, yeah, I used AI to do that. I did, and did you? Yeah, are we talking AI to AI? Great, how do we work on that? Then suddenly you're in the conversation instead of like, I'm not gonna tell anybody, I just used AI to write that little thing, and hopefully no one will figure it out, or like do a check and be like, how much did AI write this for me? And it's like 100%, and everybody's really embarrassed about that. Actually just tell people, start using it, own it, make it part of the way you do things. I mean, I'm not talking as technically as the things you're dealing with, and I'm not an engineer, but I'm saying in your everyday work, whatever that is, you need to own how you're using it, where your brain comes in. And to the point that's been made a couple times on this stage already, what are you good at? Don't let that go. Let's make sure we have training for the skills that are non-AI always happening. So if you're a designer and you're using design tools, of course you are, but keep training your brain, right? Keep training your core skills. Keep talking to other people. Keep that network, keep that commitment to learning.
I completely agree. And I think when Christine was talking earlier, and she was saying that, I think she said one of the words that she would encourage the future generation to really embrace is curiosity. But I think it's also being curious, being critical, and being bold. Yeah. You need to be bold enough, you need to be brave enough to go, yes, I've used AI in this document to own it, and to be responsible for the end points. So being able to stand behind your work.
Thank you. Let's go to the audience. We've got time for a round of questions. Anyone want to put their hand up and ask our panel any questions or share any reflections? I can see a hand over there.
Hello, Maya from DVSA with a governance-related question about AI, which is how do you motivate people not to use AI, but to be really curious, motivated, and excited about understanding how it works on a more technical level? Because there's a lot of really helpful functionality, like agents, which can help you build things without you needing the technical understanding of coding, of training, etc. But actually, does that bypass a lot of the understanding of what data it uses, how it uses data, that you need to validate inputs and outputs, things like that? So in a public sector background, how do we motivate people to understand it while they're using it?
Thank you. And in fact, as you were asking that, somebody put on Slido, should data literacy become AI literacy as well?
So at the Met Office, we've had to embrace AI really fast. At the end of 2022, there was an absolute explosion in the amount of big tech organizations who were developing machine learning, data-driven models to predict the weather. And I often refer to that Christmas as my missing Christmas, because I went home and my phone rang off the hook. I'm being WhatsApped all the time. Why do you need a Met Office if big tech can run their weather prediction models? Why have you just got a £1.2 billion supercomputer with Microsoft? So when I came back in the January, it was obvious that we were going to have to do something really fast. Now, 2003, as I say, that doesn't seem that long ago, actually, and it's only 3 years. But in 3 years, we had to take the whole organisation. I know some of you are in much bigger organisations, but that was 2,500 people at the Met Office, many of whom are not working in the same location, and we had to lift all of the organisation. So we had to lift the floor and the ceiling at the same time. We had to lift the base level understanding of what AI was, because some people had been like, oh, AI, that's not part of my job, it's not part of my life, that's outside, that's for the techie people. So we had to get everybody to realise that this was a tool in the toolkit, and it was going to touch everybody's lives, even their home lives. Every aspect of life was going to be affected. And we had to get some of these pointy-headed projects I talked about earlier, so where we could really spearhead the use of AI for weather prediction. And it's been a fantastic, challenging, interesting, Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years, but we're now at the point that the Met Office is catching up. You know, we now have a global model that is competitive with some of the big tech organisations' models on weather prediction. Now, how did we do that? So I think what you're really asking me is about raising the floor as opposed to raising the ceiling, so the pointy-headed projects, the real spearhead ones. How did we raise the floor? Well, we have this change program called AI for Everyone. And that program has lots of different components. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to talk for too long, so you need to give me the, lots of different components. We had training in there. So we had some training across all scales. So how to do prompt engineering, which frankly is a basic skill that everybody is going to need in their everyday lives. We also had some how to use deep learning. So a real spectrum of training courses. We set up a community of practice, which is a community run by the community for the community. It's voluntary, but 1 in 4 people at the Met Office have joined it. We run a really active seminar series where we have people from within the organisation, but also partners across the National Met community, plus big tech organisations coming in to talk to us about how they're using AI. We have, every year we run a really wonderful but slightly nerdy version of Glastonbury at the Met Office, where people can talk about how they're using AI and do demos. So it's really supporting one another in different communities of practice, you know, sort of like the finance teams show each other how they're using Microsoft 365, and we have a look at various other tools together. So it's been a real concerted effort, and we have talked about it a lot. I'm sure at the Met Office they are sick of me talking about this, you know, like I encourage everyone to talk about it, to think about how they could be using AI, and this has really brought up the floor as well as raising the ceiling, because then people do, like I say, move from being concerned to curious to confident. And celebrating successes has been a really big part of that. And so I'm going to bridge into diversity, but you can stop me at any moment, Gavin. So the reason we call it AI for Everyone is because AI really is for everyone, but more than anything, it should maybe have been called AI Needs Everyone, because it really does need everyone. The global tech community, only 22% of women are women. In the UK, that falls to 20%. That's really disappointing. The Lovelace report highlighted lots of concerns about this last year and pinpointed at 20%, which was so disappointing to me because there'd been a previous report run by the Alan Turing Institute 4 years earlier, and that's like 4 of possibly the most exciting years in technology that I've ever seen during those 4 years. And the Turing Institute also said that it was 20%, so 20% the needle hadn't moved at all, which is really disappointing. And this is a moment where we really need to reset diversity in technology, because diversity, there's lots of research that, Jen, you're going to know much more about this than I do, but lots of research shows that diversity supports productivity, financial performance, helps with staff retention, lots and lots of good things, but absolutely critically, it stimulates innovation. And now is the moment we need innovation, because AI has the potential to solve these big societal challenges, but not if we're not innovative. Not if we don't have the richness of a diverse workforce. And like I talk about gender quite a lot, but only because it's a proxy for other aspects of diversity. A rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can try and start to tackle the inclusion needed to achieve gender diversity, then I hope we'll have ripple-on effects into other aspects. Sorry, that was a much longer answer, and I've bridged it into what I care about. So back to you, Gavin.
I think I'll just take because that was a great answer about how to raise the floor. And I would love to talk to you more about how long it took you to get to that point. But that idea that you get everyone involved and you create spaces of learning and a culture of continuous learning around AI is the core to how you can, move anything forward. I think it's excellent. In terms of the diversity point, sometimes I just wonder too. So there's both the create it, and if you see yourself in its creation, then you're much more to take it on. To believe in your own use of these things, and creating more opportunities for people to use tools also that can help with diversity, right? But I think the other piece of it is sometimes realizing that to be a person in AI doesn't mean go and become an engineer or a coder, or it's amazing to learn the technical bits as and when, which has been set up here already. I don't know, when I ran a master's in digital sociology, I did a whole thing on Python. I am not going to tell you that I can go do anything with Python now. Nor do I want to, because that's not my strength. But it made me understand how it worked. Fine. But you don't have to do that. And I actually think sometimes we, and particularly women, cede the ground to we're not in tech. Or, no, I don't do that. And instead, look and see how much you are interacting with tech, how much you do know. It doesn't have to be the coding pieces. So, and then how you should raise your voice about how you're impacting what you're doing and be part of making that change. We use very rigid boundaries about what means in and what means out, and I think that many more of us than we think are in the tech loop, but just not coding every day or not understanding every technical aspect of it. So are you a product design person? Are you someone who's connecting the dots between what's being created and what's being sold? Even if you think to yourself, and many people do, oh gosh, I don't even know how that's made, I think that many of us actually are moving these products, moving these ideas, living these things. Can you find in your life some place, can you close that space that we always open up, right? Oh no, I don't really know that, or I'm not really very good at that. Close that space because you have something to add to it. That will increase our diversity, right? That will increase how much we have to say about what we're using, what we're creating, and allow us to be part of that process.
You've set us up perfectly for what's about to come after the break, which is all about diversity and inclusion. We're about to head for a refreshment break for half an hour or so. That'll be next door in the Great Hall. But before I release you to some tea and coffee, please join me in thanking brilliant contributions from Kirstine and Jen. Thank you.